and welcome back to The Chosen Life. Today, folks, you are in for a treat. This man has shirts that says, "I'm kind of a big deal." And you know what? He is. You think that you're busy and you're living an exciting life? Try race car driving, commentating, being the mayor of an internet city called Hinchtown, Dancing with the Stars, microbrew beer named after you, collecting guitars and antique lighters, ambassador for New Era, collaboration with watch companies, clothing line that says "fun employed" or "not retired." This is the man, the legend. You look up Chosen Life in a dictionary, you'll see his smiling face, Mr. James Hinchcliffe. James, welcome to The Chosen Life.
Well, thank you. That's quite the intro. I appreciate it, bud.
You know what? I have to disconnect from the world for about 30 minutes till it kind of sinks in as to where the direction's going. But I had 5 different directions of where I want to start with you. And I'm like, no, we're just going to do all of this. Screw it. We're just going to throw it right at them and say, damn, man. But seriously, though, how does one become that interesting so early in life?
Well, I mean, I think it's depends on who you ask on whether or not I'm that interesting. But honestly, man, I've just been so lucky. I've been so lucky to have had some incredible opportunities. And, the one thing that obviously, my main goal from being, from when I was a little kid, just being a kid, was to drive race cars for a living. And through a lot of different factors, no doubt, a lot of them being, hard work, perseverance, working your butt off, all that sort of stuff. There's an element of timing, an element of luck, and all those things. And, I grew up with a lot of kids that wanted to be drivers, and for one reason or another, it didn't work out. Not to say they didn't have the talent to do it. That's what's kind of weird about motorsports. It's a little bit different in that sense. And I've always been really cognizant of the fact that the stars really had to align for me to, end up in the position that I was in. And I never wanted to take that for granted. I always saw drivers at the track that they were so focused. They blocked out everything in the external world, and they didn't take the time to appreciate what they were getting to do. And I was very focused at what I did. And when I put my helmet on, it's, you got one job, that's win the race. But I really tried to take those moments to enjoy what that experience was like. And that just opened me up to all these other things. And I was able to sort of experience a lot of things, had a lot of cool opportunities as a result of being a racing driver. And anything that comes up, I say yes. I think you got to just try everything, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
My feeling is that this is an interesting dude. I mean, from the moment that you and I met, we instantly connected. I think it's the beard thing, although mine is going the wrong side of salt and pepper, and yours is staying a nice shade of black. But I see you, and I think if we hadn't met before, I see the beard, I see the hat, I see the graphic tee, and then I see the interesting eclectic stuff behind you, the road sign next to you, and I'm like, this guy's interesting. He likes stuff. And it's funny how people that are interested in things gravitate to others who like stuff, like things, have this natural curiosity. Was that something that came to you at a young age?
Yeah, for sure. It really did. I've always just kind of had, big eyes when looking at the world. And I started collecting little things when I was a kid. I had a lot of different interests when I was younger. I was really fortunate. I had a family and parents and an upbringing that was, they encouraged us to try new things, to explore. We got to travel a fair amount, when I was young, and I got to see different parts of the world at a young age, which I think was a big part of that as well. But yeah, man, I mean, life's a story. I just love adding pieces to that story as you go.
We were talking off air before we started, and I said, I see in the corner of my eye that there's a road sign behind you, and pretty cool. So I was saying, okay, so he's had a beer named after him. He's been on reality TV. So does he have a road named after him as well? And you were telling me that, in fact, you did have a road named after you, but not permanently.
Yeah, it was a brief thing during the Indy 500 in Indianapolis. They take some of the street signs down and replace them with drivers' names. They kind of replace it. So that's a sign that says Hinchcliffe Avenue from 2018 edition of the race. So they, unfortunately, at the end of May, they take those down and they put back up the real street names, which is much easier for commuters and people trying to get around. But they let you keep them. So just a cool little memento.
See, me being the person I am, I was telling you, I would go right back in the middle of the night. I'd put my sign back up. You were saying break off the screws so you can't
Yeah.
take it off. And I would demand that be there permanently.
Is welded on there.
But how is that feeling when you're looking up at a road sign, even knowing that it'd be temporary, but seeing your name there must be quite a rush.
It's so awesome, man. And you know, the Indy 500 in particular is such a big event, and there's so much that goes on, you know, around not just the town, but around the country, around the world, you know, surrounding that race. And so you get, like I said, you get to experience these cool things and have these cool moments. And whether it's your name up on a street in downtown Indy, or, you know, a 60-foot banner of your face hung off the side of the track on the rafters there, you know, lineups of fans for autograph sessions, things like that. I mean, it's a crazy humbling experience to see that stuff and realize that you're one of a handful of people, you know, that get to do it. And with motorsports, again, it's even that next level of this is the wrong word, but you get what I mean, of like elite, because it's tough to get into the NFL, to the NHL, to the MLB, any of them. But there are, I don't know, 1,800 to 1,200 players in those different leagues, depending, right? The Indy 500 is our biggest race of the year, size-wise, in terms of the field, the number of competitors. It's 33 cars. So when you're doing that, when your name's on one of those signs or it's hanging off the side of the Indy 500, you are one of 33 people on Earth that get to do that job, you know, on that day. And it's such a crazy thing to get to experience.
Even if you don't know racing or you're a layman when it comes to it, you know, chances are you know the Indy 500. I mean, it's just so worldwide known. The terms adrenaline junkie, rush seeker, have you heard these before?
I have. It's funny. I try to debate them sometimes because I never really thought of myself like that. But then I was asked what some of my pastimes were like things that I'd done. And I sort of had to concede that, yes, maybe there is an element of that in me.
So my partner, David Corman, it's funny. We were talking the other day and I was very excited about you coming on and we are sharing stories. And he said, you know, it's funny. These guys are very interesting. These race car drivers, as he put them. He goes, I remember that they were, you know, doing their warm-ups and practice for the big race at the time. And it was in Toronto. And beforehand, they were having the big event at a nightclub downtown near where Rebel is now. I'm based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He said the funny thing with watching these guys is they created this event there, bungee jumping in the facility, you know? And he said, I would never do this in a million years. I wouldn't jump out of a plane, but these guys couldn't line up fast enough. And not only were they bungee jumping in the club, but they were trying to do it as fast as they could on different angles, showing up each other. Sound familiar as well?
Yeah. The competition thing is real. I mean, it doesn't even have to be something adrenaline related. It's hilarious seeing a group of drivers together in any situation or scenario because they will find a way to make it a competition. And it could be rolling dice, playing pool, who could like, I don't know, pay their bill at the restaurant faster, you know, who could get from the elevator to their car in the parking lot first. Like every single thing is a competition, and it's not even a conscious decision. You're just always thinking in that sort of competitive, if there's somebody else there, you have to beat them at whatever it is you're doing.
So really stupid question. Has it ever come to the point where like, okay, one hand tied behind your back. Let's do a couple laps. Let's race the car backwards. Let's do it blindfolded and listening over our headphones. True or false?
No, false. Luckily, we have not got to that point. Yeah, that
but it's been close.
It's been close. It's been close.
Most interesting race or side bet you ever saw somebody doing as far as a challenge, so to speak, in off time?
Oh man, I mean, it's not that it's necessarily particularly, you know, unique or interesting. It's just that I always looked at what the potential repercussions of getting it wrong were, right? And so I was always really worried about hurting myself and then not being able to drive. As much as I like doing these other things and like beating people and pushing the limits, whatever, there's nothing I like more than driving and racing. And so if that was taken away from me, it would really suck. But you remember this one time, I wasn't there, but these two guys, you know, they were on a ski trip together, And I stopped skiing when I became a professional because I didn't like, it was just too, it wasn't worth the risk. I really like skiing. I miss skiing, but it wasn't worth the risk. And these two guys were just egging each other on, and it's who could go faster, who could jump higher, who could take all these bigger risks. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you guys doing, man? Like, if that goes south, that is so bad. And then like the fact of having to call your boss up and be like, hey, so and so dared me to a race down the hill, and I'm going to be out for the next 4 weeks. That's a tough call to make, you know?
We've heard these time and time again. I mean, stories of baseball players in the off season, herding cattle, racing bulls. The stories go on and on as far as what people do. And then ATV accident, very common. And then they come back and there's a story around it, and that's not where it really happened. So
yeah,
a
lot of those.
Completely understand. But one thing that you left an impression on me when we first met was the humbleness. If we met off the street, if you told me you were a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I would believe you. If you told me I play guitar by the seashore, I would have believed you as well. It's amazing that every place you've gone through in life, James, the impression is you kept humbleness. How did you do that when so many people, their egos would explode doing a fraction of what you did?
Well, I really appreciate that, first of all. And honestly, I credit my parents, and I credit my upbringing, because for me, it's like I said before, I was always so appreciative of all the things that I got to do, that I always sort of lived in this is going to sound like kind of sad, but I almost always lived in this fear that, or at least this acceptance that it could all end tomorrow. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is promised you. Just because you're good at driving a race car doesn't mean you're going to drive it forever. It could end at any time. And so I really kind of always remembered that, and always tried to just enjoy the day, take things one day at a time, and know that, like, I'm not special. There's other people doing exactly what I'm doing. There's a lot of people that have done a lot greater than I'm doing. Like, we're all just people, and that was always, I think, just something that kind of came from my dad. My dad and I spent a lot of time together coming up through karting and through racing and everything. And he was a great guy, very humble guy, very accomplished guy. But I think that's part of it, and I had some sporting heroes that sort of were along that same line. And those were people that I idolized, and I wanted to sort of emulate if I ever made it to that point. And I think it was just a function of having some good role models in that sense, and kind of wanting to emulate that.
If we broke into James Hinchcliffe's room when he was 10 or 12, let's say, chances are, what posters would we have seen on his wall?
Cars, man, all cars. It was the walls were painted with cars. There was posters of cars. There was a whole bookshelf of model cars. I had like a checkered flag painted on my ceiling above my bed, so that way I could just dream of winning races in the checkered flag. So that was me. I was a very one track obsession. I had a lot of kind of interests and hobbies, but I had one obsession.
And we're going to get to cars in the moment, I promise. We're going to get to dad as well, because there is a segue with him. But it's funny, because I always say in The Chosen Life, when you're hearing somebody's story, inevitably, I know I start to think back to my story, and I'm sure others do as well. So hearing how you're growing up, I'm sure people trace back and think, what was on my wall then? What inspired me? What's alarming to me is when I think back when I was 7 or 8, I had a giant Mr. T poster on my wall. And that was my hero. And when somebody said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, Mr. T.
There you go.
I think I did it, but I'm not quite sure. Well, kind of, but
there you go. Yeah. You need a little more jewelry, but yeah, I think,
but
I could see it.
You could sit here like, hey, but it's amazing that you actually have this vision of what you like. And cars, inevitably when we bring you up, we'll always talk about cars. So I'm not surprised. And it's great to see fulfilling that legacy. And not everybody gets to live their dreams, so to speak. But that as well, we're talking about humbleness, but yet I look on Google Maps, and I was trying to find, because I wanted to go visit for a vacation, a place called Hinchtown. And I wasn't too successful. But apparently you're the mayor of it. So
yeah,
where the heck is Hinchtown, and what's up with that?
It's kind of everywhere, man. It's everywhere and anywhere. It is our little online community. It's funny. So when I kind of first started getting out of go-karting, getting into car racing in the junior categories, trying to make a name for myself, get up into IndyCar racing, I had this mentor, so to speak, who really taught me a lot about the business side of the sport of racing, because it's very different from other sports. If you don't have the money to go racing in the first place, doesn't matter how good you are, no one's going to see it, right? And if you don't just have that money, from family or whatever, you have to go find it from sponsorship and things like that. And I, got into car racing out of karts in 2004. And 2003, the racing world completely changed because that was the end of the tobacco advertising era. Mm-hmm. So the ban started in 2004. So all of a sudden you had this sport that was fueled almost entirely by tobacco money. All that money was gone and nobody knew how to find sponsorship. And it was like a cutthroat business at the time because it was everyone was just used to calling up whatever cigarette brand wasn't on a car and say, hey, I need $40 million. And they were like, is that it? Okay. And it was raining money. And then overnight, it was all gone. And so the off-track side of the sport all of a sudden became a lot more important for drivers because there wasn't this massive, faucet at the top just draining down money throughout the whole ladder system. There was almost no money at the top to even keep the top running. So everything below had to be self-funded. And so I had to learn the business side of the sport very young. Like I said, this mentor of mine really coached me on this. And he goes, you got to stand out. A lot of people can drive a race car fast, but you need that sponsorship to drive the race car. So how are you going to beat them off the track? How are you going to beat them to that sponsorship money? And so it became, honestly, my job was 90% begging for money and 10% driving the car. But that first 90 was necessary. So he's like, you got to stand out. You got to be appealing to sponsors. You got to be a good spokesperson. And so one of the things that we did to sort of be different was we created this concept of Hinchtown. This at the time, like Twitter wasn't around yet. Like people were just kind of getting into websites, from a driving standpoint. And so we created this concept of this little internet town. I was the mayor of it, and we sort of created this little online community and fans became, citizens of Hinchtown. And at first, nobody really knew what we were trying to do. Frankly, I don't know if we even knew what we were trying to do. We were just sort of trying to do something different. And, within a couple of years, it really took off. And I got introduced as the mayor of Hinchtown, at racetracks more than I did James Hinchcliffe. And it's kind of just been with me ever since.
I gotta tell you, people either told me I was a genius or mad for coming up with the chosen lawyer.
Yeah.
And I said, most people can't spell my last name or can't even remember it, but they sure as heck can remember chosen lawyer.
Yeah.
When I hear your story of Hinchtown, I think to myself, why did I come up with the chosen land or the promised land and make this Sims type community? I love it. I think that's genius because it's memorable. It makes fans relate, commentate with each other, and it builds community. And I love that. And it's creating interaction, which is really, really positive.
Yeah, no, it's been huge. And the fans have been very receptive to it. We've had some, fun things that we've done with it over the years, competitions, community type things, like you said. And it's been a lot of fun.
So now when people think, very often when I have the guests on, it's somebody I do know or have met through whatever occasion, or we become good friends. You and I have spoken on several occasions and got to know each other through a mutual love, I would say. And anybody watching this would guess right away cars because they know I'm a car fanatic. You're a car guy, obviously, so it's got to be cars. Wrong. It wasn't about cars. Then they would say it's probably sneakers because I love sneakers as well. I'm a Jordan 1 guy. I assume are you a sneaker guy, not a sneaker guy?
Yeah, I'm a sneaker guy.
Yeah. What's your sneaker of choice?
Actually, Jordan 1s.
Of course they are. So
yeah, we haven't even talked about that part. That's funny.
We swear to not talk about this, but so we love our Jordan 1s. We love our cars. But no, it came up because we met. How do you recall?
We met because I was buying a condo, I think. Right? Or selling a condo. I was buying a condo.
You can talk about that, but I can't because
right. Yes.
Because we got solicitor-client privilege. But you brought it up, so we could say that. That's how we originally met. Yeah. And then I recall you looking at the corner of your eye, and because I have some stuff on my coffee table area, and it was because of watches. We love our timepieces.
Love our timepieces. Yeah.
And I don't think we even talked about cars the whole time. It was literally an hour of watch talk.
Yeah, because you clocked my glass chute, which I was surprised because most people don't even know what that watch is. And not only did you know it, I mean, it was one of the first, you're like, is that I'm like, yes, by a matter of fact, it is. And then we kind of did our business and then we're like, all right, let's talk about this.
And we literally spent an hour talking about Glashütte. Now, I've since come to be a little more sophisticated. So I met another fan of the brand, and it's Glasuta, apparently.
There you go. That does make some sense.
And the reason I know about Glasuta is because before COVID hit, that winter going into spring, him and his buddy in Montreal were planning a trip to the Glasuta factory, and they said, "Hey, would you like to come?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm in."
That's awesome.
Because you always think watches Swiss, but yet in Germany they have a whole legacy starting with Lange, and really Glasuta started it all. So in honor of our friendship and everything else, after that appointment, as you and I got to know each other and became friends, I finally picked up my first Glasuta, and you can see it close up over here, and just a different sort of crazy timepiece. It's just the craftsmanship, everything else. I've always was enthralled with it, and I thought, you know what, it's good enough for James, and hey, maybe I can do it as well. So you start saving up for years, and you finally make the Glasuta purchase happen, and of course you got one on your wrist as well.
Yeah, I'm wearing a Tag Heuer Carrera special edition right now. This is it was an Indy 500. So it was the 102nd running of the Indy 500. Here, let's do it this way. A little smarter. The 102nd running of the Indy 500, and so they made 102 of them. Yes. You can see there's like you just have to see what the Indianapolis 500 logo is kind of on the little dial there, and branded on the back.
There we go.
500 logo.
What number are you out of 102 there?
100.
Ooh, that's a nice number.
Yeah, nice round number.
Nice. Where did you pick up that bad boy?
That one I picked up at it was a charity function around the month of May. Bunch of stuff was up for auction, and Tag's been a big supporter of the series and a few of the drivers, and so they had it in there and couldn't let it go.
I gotta tell you, I love the Monacos. That's my favorite as far as the uniqueness of the square shape. I remember sending you a link that somebody I knew on my watch collector site had the whole collection. There was like 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah, because that was the 50th anniversary ones. Because there's still one of those. Because I love Monaco. That was the first watch I really fell in love with, if I'm totally honest. Like when I was a kid, like way back when, just because it was so unique, right? Especially it was just so distinguished and distinguishable, and Steve McQueen and that whole
come on,
right.
How cool.
It's the easiest one to fall in love with, and I did, and so it's been on my list forever. And I don't know why I didn't just kind of pick one up along the way at some point, but then I clocked this 50th anniversary one. They made, I think, 5 different colors for that edition. There's all the normal ones. You can get them, the black and the blue and the Gulf colors or whatever. But these were kind of unique ones, and they were limited edition. And one of those color combos is this blue and silver that I think is just phenomenal. And I'm holding out to get that. You sent me the link with the guy that had one, but he had the whole collection.
The whole collection, you just wanted just one.
It was super tempting because that whole collection was so beautiful.
Folks, I think we should start a GoFundMe on Hinchtown here, and let's make James' dream of a Monaco on his wrist happen, But what a shocker that you're wearing a racing watch today, and that you have the love of Monacos. But of course, wearing your Jordan 1s with the Monaco, it only makes sense. It's such a cool watch. Because I'm a righty, I still like the Monaco where I can turn it, not the lefty style one. Some people like the lefty because that's more, original. I would love like a skeleton version of it. There's so many ways they can go with it.
For sure.
And, you brought up a very important influence on your life, and that was being Pops. And let's talk about Pops and watches.
Yeah, I mean, he's really the one that kind of got me in love with them. He's the one that got me my Glasutte for my 30th birthday. But he was a big watch guy. He had a decent collection that tragically they were robbed. My parents' house was broken into, and he lost majority of his watches. And that wasn't that long ago. And so he had spent a lifetime kind of collecting them and building up, the collection. But he lost a lot, which was really unfortunate. Some nice pieces, but he passed away a year and a half ago, and there was no, it's fine. And there was a couple that were just kept in a different place, I guess, from the safe or whatever. However, they got nicked, and my brother and I each walked away with a couple of nice pieces. So we got some nice things to remember Dad by, because he's it's his fault. It's his fault. We both love watches, so it seems only appropriate.
Now I gotta ask you: was the Glasuda that he gave you your first real timepiece? Do you remember when you got your first one?
I'm trying to think what that would have. No, I would have had. I think I had a different tag before that. I had a Breitling before that. So yeah, maybe my third.
The Glasuda was your third.
Yeah.
And which timepiece or timepieces did you get from Dad's legacy? Can you say which ones?
So an Omega,
Yes.
a Seamaster.
Seamaster, very nice.
And a Breitling Avenger.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was a big hill to climb in my mind to own multiple pieces. You know, it's one thing when you have your one watch and you're wearing your watch constantly, you know, it makes life very easy. Once you start getting into those multiples, it's a different threshold, you know, to make that decision. I had a watch collector on from our site. His name is Super Doc. Anyways, I met him over in the Niagara. And the funny thing was that when he came on the episode, you know, he brought out one of the boxes and showing up. And there's like, you know, 10, 12 pieces. And that's just one of several boxes. Mm-hmm. And one piece in the box, you know, could be somebody's grail beyond unimaginable. And this is just one of many, you know, like there's Daytonas, there's Presidents, you know, there's EPs, you know, it's amazing where it goes. And I said, at some point it becomes not a hobby, but it's an illness. It's a real life illness. And the only cure is just more and more. And I always tell people, you know, don't go into debt for this. Don't put it on your credit card, you know, but if you have the means to, you live once, it brings you happiness. Why not? My older brother was my father figure to me. He's the one who got me into it. So I always tell him, it's your fault. You got me into watches. You got me into cars. This is all you, buddy. Yeah. So when we were sitting that day in my office and I'm looking at your wrist, I'm looking at my wrist. It's amazing how watch people get one another. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the story about your dad. I believe in Oakville took you to the store and picking it up. And why Glasuda out of all brands did he introduce you to that one?
I think, well, so he had one and he had got my brother one for my brother's 30th. My brother's 3 years older than I am. And so it kind of became like the Hinchcliffe family tradition. And so actually, so I actually got his as well when he passed. So I technically have two now. But I think we were both big fans of German cars. And I think maybe something about that, you know, kind of brought him to the German watch side a little bit. But he also, he was, you know, my dad was a British gentleman, right? Sort of very classy, quintessential British guy. And there's something nice and refined and sophisticated about those watches. And I think that's what attracted him to them. And so, he kind of started this new family tradition of all the men in the family having one of those. So it's now I just need to have a couple kids and carry on the tradition.
I was going to say in the future, you know, if it is in the cards or will be in the cards, I'm sure that's a legacy that you'll continue on as your brother as well, planning to do that with his children in the future.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, neither one of us have kids at the moment, but I think we'd love to carry on that tradition.
That being said, man, enjoy your sleep then while you can.
That's
what it all. There's one change you'll see in your life, by the way. It's less money for watches and less sleep. That's the main difference in life when you have children. Now, are you still collaborating with a watch brand as well?
Sort of, yeah. So
BRM?
With BRM. So we did a watch back last year, and because I'm not racing full time this year. So that's that watch is still available, and that was a collaboration that we did. That was a lot of fun. They're great people to work with, and they're great watches. I've got a couple BRMs now, and I very racing inspired. It does seem like I've got a bit of a theme here, doesn't it? When the other one on my list is the Daytona, but we talked about that. You know, I've got to win the Daytona, because that's the trophy you get when you win the sports car race, the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Every driver in the car gets a special edition Rolex Daytona, and I love that watch, but I promised myself I wouldn't buy one. I got to go earn one. So that just adds to the racing collection. But BRM has been awesome to work with and heavily involved in motorsports, and they do a great job.
How did you guys come together originally? And what's it like collaborating for a watch and being involved in the design process? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so we were introduced through a mutual partner. I was working with a group that had an existing deal basically with BRM, and so they made the introduction, and we got along really well, and thought it'd be fun to do it. And you know, the process. It's, I mean, anytime you're part of the like the genesis of something, it's fun, right? Getting to build something and have your kind of your fingerprints on it a little bit. And there's you know, a lot of talk about the color combos. We wanted to tie in some of the sponsorships we were doing at the time, and kind of make it paying a bit homage to the car and the companies involved in making that season happen. There's a nice little Canadian touch on there that I snuck in, but there's a lot of back and forth with the designers, and they were incredibly open, and you know, there's so much they can do. I think that's the big thing, was understanding like how much you can kind of customize these things if you're given that chance. You know, how many things are sort of changeable or interchangeable on these timepieces. And it was kind of really fun to be a part of that and see the finished product.
And how long has that partnership been for?
So that's been about a year and a half.
Amazing. Now, have you ever been involved as far as also in car construction or modification? Have you been approached by any companies for that?
No, I haven't had the chance to do that yet. Would love to, and I've got a few of my buddies, fellow drivers, have been, you know, plucked by various manufacturers to help out with sort of some car development, and you know, whether it's a big car manufacturer that you would have heard of, or some of these more boutiquey places, normally from over in Europe, that are creating these sort of, you know, limited run of 25, 50, maybe 100 cars, and kind of developing something fun. But talking to those guys about that experience is pretty cool. So yeah, if it came along, I'd absolutely be down for that.
Well, I'd be telling everybody watching right now, make sure you're hitting that like, putting your comments. You know, we'll pass it along to James, subscribing to the channel, and finding, because we're going to be showing different clips of this episode as well. And for those people in Bugatti that are watching right now, you'll have the contact information to reach James, and maybe we can, you know, be matchmaking you guys together.
Love that. Love that.
Now, before we get to cars, because we brought it up now, I got to ask, Jordan 1s, how did you get into Jordan 1s? What's the story there?
So this is actually, it's funny because this is brand new for me. This is brand new for me. And I had a friend that I was watching a show with. I don't remember what show it was now. It was kind of a while ago, and the main character was wearing this sick pair of shoes. And I was like, man, I've sort of like, I've reached that stage, that stage in life where, like, for me, like a really clean pair of like nice kicks is like as good or better than dress shoes, even dressed up. Kind of like got to that point. I don't know if you reach that point, or you reach that point of like not caring. I'm not sure where it comes from, but yeah, so I made this comment about this character in the show, and because it's kind of his style. Like throughout the show, you always see him kind of wearing these sweet kicks, and he ended up buying me a pair as a gift. Like, it was a while later. I don't know how he even kind of remembered that, but he bought a pair as a gift. And when I'm like, okay, I need to get, I've got the sickness, right? Like, I can't afford to be as into watches as I want to be, right? Nobody can. And so I think I was telling you this, for a while, my sort of hobby, my collection hobby, was being fueled by bourbon. So I went on this huge tear of just like seeking out and collecting, trading, like online communities, like the whole bit. And I was starting to get kind of burnt out on that. And so, yeah, so just recently I got this kind of first pair of Jordans, and I was like, all right, this might be the new collection.
It's pretty amazing.
So I need tips. I need tips and some direction, some guidance.
It's funny because my love of Jordans came from actually a health scare concern. Long story short, I had a tumor in my foot, out of all things, at the top of my foot, benign, but I could barely walk for months and kind of hobbling along. And my nephew said to me, why don't you try a pair of Jordan 1s? I know you like Air Force 1s, but try the Jordan 1s, the highs, because they don't put pressure on the top of your foot. And it was the only shoe I could wear. I've never been a lover of dress shoes, realizing that probably why is because it created the issue, because it's something I lived with my whole life, didn't realize it was even there. And the love of Jordan 1s was born. Next thing you know, a year later, I'm in New York City for SneakerCon, and it's like, I've never, the community of sneakerheads is
it's
there
I've
were
heard the
lineups
stories. Yeah.
down the roads and roads and roads. Like we were camped out since 5 a.m. trying to get into sneaker con, and it's just incredible, and it's grown ever since. It's a whole Jordan documentary. I do have a pair of original 85 Jordans, but they're really, really beat up. I could have bought the almost brand new pair, but I said, I'm not spending $2,000. I probably should have bought those.
Yeah.
I don't even want to tell you how much they're worth now. I'm going to vomit in my mouth, but that's how the sneaker community is. But it's incredible how the same people, and you start to notice, like, for example, if you ever go to a Doctor Who, reptile convention, heavy metal, all those people generally are the same people. The same person who collects reptiles, the same person who listens to heavy metal, the same person who likes Doctor Who science fiction.
Right, right.
Same person who likes sneakers generally likes cars and likes watches. It's just amazing
Yeah.
how we kind of
That's
all
funny.
clamor together.
Yeah, yeah.
So now going back to cars, you talked about how you got into car racing originally, but how early in your life did you say to yourself, I'm going to do this for a living? This is going to be me for real.
Well, it's a good question because my love of motorsports started from like literally my earliest memories of life were watching races with dad. I mean, I loved it from as far back as I can remember. He was a huge car guy, a huge racing fan. I just sort of inherited it from him. And so, I'm talking back 3-4 years old. And then I got a go-kart for my 9th birthday. And that's when I started actually racing myself. But when I started, it wasn't necessarily with the aspirations of doing it professionally, because even at 9 years old, I'm like, that's not a real job. Like people don't actually get to do that, but it's a hobby. Like a lot of kids play hockey knowing they're never going to play in the NHL. They just like, getting together with the guys and playing hockey. For me, that's what racing was. It was just a way for dad and I to like hang out on weekends, and we get a mutual love of motorsport and whatever. And it wasn't until I was 14 when that sort of switch flipped, because at that point, what is essentially like the professional karting tour, which yes is kind of a real thing, and that's people from all over North America and coming in from Europe or whatever, South America. That's where all these young drivers are coming to try and make it as racing drivers. Like that's the league you've got to be in if you want to move into cars and kind of go from there. And at 14, a guy that owned a team at that level had been watching me locally. We were from roughly the same area. And he was like, hey man, like, I think you got what it takes if you want to take a crack at this. And so my dad and I had a conversation about it, and we thought, all right, well, why not? Let's give it a try, and we'll just have fun with it. If it stops being fun, we'll stop, and we'll just see how far we can take it. And so at that point, at 14 is when I sort of adjusted my mindset, and it was no longer, hey, this is a hobby that dad and I do on weekends. It's now like, okay, now I've got to work hard at being better at this because it's now a goal of mine.
Now, if I walked into your garage back then, was dad the type that had motorcycles, ATVs? Was he a gearhead? Did he have was he working on a project car? What was his car motorcycle life like?
Classic British cars. So he was an old Brit. He was a classic Brit. And so he had classic British cars. Over the years, he had, the first one I remember was an MGB. We then had a Morgan 2+2. We had a Triumph TR4. He got something called a Marcos, which is a car almost no one's ever heard of, but one of the coolest. If you look it up from for its time, it looked like the Batmobile. Like it was the coolest car.
This is not a Fisker you're talking about.
No. Austin Healey Bug-Eye Sprite, like an Austin Healey Sprite. So there was always an old British car in the garage that was inevitably leaking oil and needed, the brakes fixed and the indicator wouldn't work and whatever. But that was just it. He just loved those cars. And that's what I learned to drive manual when I was 10 on the Austin Healey, on the Bug-Eye Sprite. So I just had this love of machines and cars, especially old cars. And yeah, that was dad's car passion for sure.
So I'm afraid to ask this because, I hate to dash my dreams and my hopes, but I'm seeing your life one of two ways. Either the 21 Savage life where you got the 12-car garage and you only got 6 cars, and we got the Bugatti and the McLaren, or we got not that there's anything wrong with it, but the Acura SUV or the Porsche Cayenne or the Mercedes G-Wagon. And which camp are you in, buddy?
B.
Oh, why?
I'll tell
How?
you why. No, because
Yes.
there's a logical reason for this, and I will explain.
Okay, please.
So there's two important things to remember. First is that I live and work in the United States as a Canadian on a visa. My status in this country is very temporary and very revocable if I do anything naughty. Second, I kind of had this theory that I shouldn't spend a bunch of money on a car that's going to make it that much more likely I end up in jail. And what helped me do that was knowing, like, man, I've got the best weekend ride out there. It's called an IndyCar, and I can drive it as fast as I want. So I could get my sort of need for speed, so to speak, as much as that term sounds sort of cliche, out on the weekends. And I didn't have to do that on the road. And that was genuinely part of it, right? Is I had this really strict policy for a long time of like, don't buy a supercar and end up either in jail or wrapped around a light post because, some drunk guy or some kid texting runs you off the road. Quite honestly, driving on the road terrifies me. So that I was always the SUV guy. I broke my own rule ish a couple times. I had my daily driver at one point was a C63 AMG, C63S, which an incredible car. I will own one of those again. And then I had as a fun car, I had an AMG GTS for a while, and I loved that thing. It was awesome. But the roads in Indianapolis are terrible, and I'm gone all summer on the road, and you can't drive it in the winter. So after 3 years of it just sitting there, I think I drove it a dozen times. I'm like, this is a waste of a car. Like, cars should be driven. And so I got rid of it. So I've always said that once I like properly retire and stop traveling so much, I will get back into that game and get myself a nice toy. But for the time being, I've got dogs and I travel a lot. So I've got SUVs.
Are you endorsing Mercedes, or you guys have a contract there, or this is just
Nope.
nope.
Just love them.
Mercedes, if you're listening as well, Bugatti's talking to this guy, so you better jump in pretty quick here because it's gonna heat up. So never a supercar, never a muscle car.
No, like I said, yeah, the closest thing to the supercar was the GTS, and muscle cars. I love and appreciate them. I don't crave them. Like I can go to a garage that's got all the cool old stuff from the 60s and 70s, and I love it. I genuinely am fascinated by it. I enjoy it. But it's not something that I need to have. If I was gonna go classic, I would go British, I think, just because of my upbringing. Like I want an E-Type one day. That's what I want. One day I'll have an E-Type in the garage, just because that was like one of the ones on Dad's list that he never got to. And I always thought they were just gorgeous cars. So that'll be on the list one day.
Doing what you're doing for a living, it just kind of hit me because some stuff just comes up organically as we're talking. How much do you love or hate the Fast and Furious series?
I'm ambivalent to it. I'm not a well, I don't even know if drag racers would be affected by it, because it's not drag racing, it's street racing, right? Yes. Like I really don't endorse street racing. I really don't condone that behavior. Okay. So, but like, if you can take it as it's meant, which is just as a fun movie, it's entertaining, I guess. But I don't really feel one way or the other about it, to be honest.
So let's start. Like, 3 cars come to my mind. So 69 GTO drives by you. Do you look, or?
Yeah, I'll look once.
Yeah. C2 Corvette.
No, but for me, Corvettes are older or newer. I kind of on either side of that.
Yeah. To me, it's funny because either it's much older or much newer. Those middle years, like the late 70s, the 80s, the 90s, it was a little rough stretch there.
Yeah,
for sure. Lambo or Ferrari guy?
Ferrari.
It's funny because it's like Beatles versus Stones. You're either one or the other. I'm a Ferrari guy as well. I don't know what it is. It's just you're naturally inclined to one or the other. Maybe Porsche, but generally it's Ferrari or Lambo for sure. Yeah, between those two, Ferrari for sure. I think for me, I got this opportunity when I was really young, when I was, I don't know, I was probably 20 or 21, something like that. I was hired as an instructor for a track day for a Lamborghini club.
and I had never driven one before. I was 20, like I'd never driven one. And I did a track day, driving in almost every single one you could think of, from like a Countach up to, I'm trying to think of what the newest one would have been. Like in Murcielago, I think, was kind of where we were at in the timeline. And I was just on track. And this is why, so I was kind of jaded by this experience, but like all we were doing was driving on track. But on track, I found them very underwhelming. And they're just so much more expensive. So I'm like, you're just paying for the badge. Like, why are you paying that much more money for a car that doesn't actually drive as well as a Ferrari does on track? And that was my personal opinion. Some people will disagree with me. Some people buy it for the look, not the driving experience. Most people aren't tracking these things anyway. But I had that experience when I was young. So it's kind of always made me go the Ferrari way if we're going head to head against the Lambo.
I remember a guy once saying to me, when you get that supercar, it's like sleeping with a porn star. It's just not what you expect it to be. And I'm like, okay, buddy, we won't go there, but sure.
but also like I would also look at the cost of those things, right? I was like, for that same amount of money, again, think about the era we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Like for that same amount of money, you could have like an R8 and a 911 turbo. I'm like, I would rather have those two cars for the cost of this one, but that's just me.
I do. It's a little funny you say that, because everything that in collection wise is all in the barter system. So this one pair of shoes can buy me these two watches, and this car, it's funny.
That's how you rationalize it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're looking at a watch and you're funny, would you want this watch, or would you want to have two sports cars? It's amazing. You're putting two sports cars on your wrist. It's mind-boggling the currencies we're talking about here. So it's another worlds. Now, in segueing as far as where we are in cars, I did not forget about that, and I did want to talk about it. In your clothing line, you have a couple of interesting logos. One says "fun employed" in one word, which I don't know grammatically that's correct, but we'll go with it.
I'm sure it's not.
And "not retired" with a period. So in the new announcement in December of 2021, you made it very clear that you are not retiring, but exploring other types of racing. So are you going to be doing like learning to race helicopters? Are you going to be doing scuba racing? What are we referring to there?
Well, I mean, scuba diving is a passion of mine, but
of course
of course. No, I'm going scuba diving next week. Actually, I'm very excited about that.
In Bahamas?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I'm good, eh?
You are very good. You're very good. So what that really meant was I was stepping back from full-time IndyCar racing, but there's a lot of other kinds of car racing out there. And so my goal for next year is actually to be doing some of the endurance racing, the sports car stuff. I need to go win myself that Daytona. So, we're gonna hopefully, we're working on a deal right now and hopefully get it buttoned up soon to be back behind the wheel in 22 doing some endurance racing stuff.
I'm telling you, the way you said, and I've seen the winners getting handed their Daytona. I would be doing this till I'm 80. I don't care if I'm on crutches. I don't care if I'm on life support. I'm getting that damn Daytona if it kills me. And I totally understand why you're doing it. It's got to be amazing, because how many guys are in that field when you're off racing?
Oh man. So what's interesting about that race is there are 5 different classes of cars all racing on track at the same time. And they have anywhere from kind of 12 to 30 cars per class. So I think this year at the race, there was 67 cars on track, and each car has usually at least 4 drivers. So in terms of actual numbers of drivers, it's huge. It's hundreds. But you're only racing against your class. So you could finish 25th overall, but if you were first in your class, you get the watch.
How close have you come to that Daytona?
I think 5th is the best I've done so far, which was really fresh. That year was really frustrating because our car was just, we had a straight line deficit. I know this sounds like every driver complaining, like, yeah, my car was slow, but legitimately the team that I drove with, they had won the race 2 or 3 times before over the last, 5-6 years. And they said this was the best race they'd ever run. Our pit stops were great. All 4 drivers were like doing the job they needed to on track. Our car just wasn't fast enough. Like everybody else was making mistakes that we weren't making, but over 24 hours, even if you're a 1/10 of a second behind, over 24 hours, that just grows. And they make a little mistake and we catch up a bit and they pull back out. So anyway, long story, but fifth is the best I've done there so far.
I think in your profession, it's a very, very hard one among so many things. First of all, many would say you'd have to be absolutely nuts to do what you're doing for a living. You know, you're taking your life in your hands each time you go in there. Like, it's not an easy job, and the level of concentration, like you think about, like, you're benching the most weight you've ever done and the level of focus you have to do for like 1 or 2 reps. You have to have that level of focus the whole time you're doing it, because one slip up, you never know, right? But it feels like if you're like Lewis Hamilton, for example, or any of the top stars, and you're constantly winning championships, and what are they saying? It's the car. The driver is kind of meaningless at this point. But yet, if you screw up, yeah, he's a bad driver. So like, you almost can't win.
Yeah, that's true. In F1, it's definitely harder because of that disparity in the cars. I mean, that's why I was always drawn to IndyCar, and to this day think it's a better on track product, is because the teams and drivers are all given mostly the same parts, right? You get one of two engines, the car's the same, the bodywork's the same, the tires are the same, the brakes are the same. And so the difference between the best team and the worst team is that. Where in F1, because every team builds their entire own car every year, the difference between teams is that. And so, yeah, when Lewis is winning everything, people are like, oh yeah, well, it's the best car. That is true. And that's been the case in F1 for a long time. You know, sometimes we get lucky and another team is right up there with them. But what's so impressive about Lewis is how consistently he destroyed his teammate, right? So when you're Mercedes and you've got the best car, every driver wants to be in that car. So they had the pick of the litter every single time. And no matter who they put beside him, he buried them. So that's how, when I look at drivers in F1, you have to compare him against their teammate. And he was just so consistently phenomenal. And even a couple of times when they didn't have the best car last year, especially the way he pulled it out, it just highlighted how insanely talented he is. But yes, it is a double-edged sword. And also, like, if there's a mechanical failure on the car, it's got nothing to do with you. Well, the results sheet just says 18th, 19th, 20th. If you don't watch the race and don't know what happened, that just looks bad on you. But it's a team sport. It really is. The entire team deserves credit when something goes right, and the entire team has to, it's win together, lose together. It's that sort of philosophy.
I love that. Now, as far as theme of winning together, losing together, many would say, the greatest competition in partnerships is marriage. And scuba diving in the Bahamas, what else are we going to do? We're also going to marry an actress while we're at it. So, I'm sorry, man. I love you, but like, how cliche is that? The race car driver and the actress, right? You've heard that one before.
Yeah, I've seen this one.
A couple of times. So the first lady of Hinchtown, how did you guys meet?
High school.
Way back.
It's a funny story. So my wife Becky, she's an actress. She's been an actress for many years.
Rebecca Dalton, yes.
Rebecca Dalton. And as she, over the last few years, she's definitely done a lot of these, like the Hallmark genre, like Christmas movies and stuff like that. And people always joke,
Lori Loughlin specials.
Exactly right. Yes. Exactly right. And people always joke that like our story could almost be written into one of these movies, because those are pretty formulaic scripts. Like, you kind of know, girl from small town moves to big city for job, has to come back to small town over the holidays to solve some crisis, has to work with some guy she really doesn't like at first, but realize they have to work together to solve this crisis. Throughout solving the crisis together, they fall in love, they kiss, movie's over. And our story is we went to high school together. Becky's 2 years younger than me. So we had some mutual friends. We kind of knew each other. And right before my prom, my senior formal, whatever, my girlfriend and I broke up, but I had an extra ticket already. So I was like, hey, Becky, do you want to just come as friends? So that was technically our first date, even though it wasn't really a date. I was bragging it because she was at the time the most beautiful girl in school. And so I was super proud walking into prom with her. But I was 2 years older, so I graduated and went off to school, and she stayed, and we kind of chased our careers. And so all through our 20s, I think we only saw each other in person once over the next 12 years. And she pursued acting, I pursued driving. We both kind of found our place and whatever. And then I had a really bad accident in 2015. And she kind of reached out after that to just sort of check in, see how I was doing. and we just sort of started chatting. And then a few months later, she was in LA working. I was in LA, just outside LA, testing a car. And I was like, hey, I texted her, said, hey, I got a free night before I fly out tomorrow. You want to grab dinner? And that was it.
All right, James. So you know what? You can get this story past a lot of people, but I'm a dude and my dude meter is going off like crazy. So I got to ask you now, just between you and I and a few million people here,
Right.
this whole prom thing, this wasn't the thing that you orchestrated in the background as far as, oh, we broke up. I got an extra ticket. You happen to be the best looking girl in school. Why don't you come?
You know, it's funny. I wish I was smart enough to have thought up that plan, but I was not. No, I did not orchestrate it quite like that. Or else I would have had some like better closing move, right? Because obviously it couldn't have been that good a date. We didn't talk again. We didn't see each other again for 12 years. I was just playing the long game, man. You'd leave them wanting more, right?
That's a smart move. You know, I can tell you that in my 40s, I come up with that. I could not have come up with that plan at prom either. My best was, hey, want to come back and listen to some music? And everybody likes music. That's not threatening. Why not?
Want to hear my mixtape?
And you know what? Maybe 20% of the time we even got to the music, but that's the best I got, man. But honestly, so that's been a lot of years in between. But now, as far as you're saying, you know, perhaps children in the future, what's the future for the Hinchcliffe Dalton duo?
It's exciting. I mean, you know, I'm kind of obviously in this transition a little bit out of, you know, full-time IndyCar, and that has freed up a lot of time for me. I've been able to be kind of a lot more supportive of Becky and her career and kind of go visit her on set and things like that and be a little more present for that, which has been awesome. She's actually quite literally, as we are speaking, on set in Toronto for a new Apple TV Plus limited series that's going to be coming out later. So very big deal. Super, super proud of her about this. I don't think I'm allowed to say anymore, but it's going to be cool. Like watch this space for more. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, I want to get back into a little bit of driving, nothing quite as full on as what I was doing before. Becky's career is in a really good spot right now. She's been booking a lot of jobs, and this opportunity is a big one and hopefully leads to more. So for us, we're so lucky, man. Like I've said this right from the top, you know, we're so lucky that we both got to pursue our dreams, live our dreams out, continue to live our dreams. And what's cool about our jobs now is with, you know, me in the commentating side and her on the acting side, you're either on or off, right? So if I'm on a race weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm very busy. It's very flat out, whatever. I get home Sunday night. I don't have a ton of responsibilities between Monday to Thursday, where as a driver, it was, you're in the shop at engineering meetings, you're in the gym training, you're in the simulator, like every minute was booked for you. Now we have so much more like freedom. And so when Becky, when she's working, she's 24/7, you know, focused on acting. But when she's in between jobs, we kind of have this free time. And so we can do things like go to the Bahamas next week and go scuba diving. Why not? So I haven't especially had that freedom for 20 years. My entire like adult life, I've never been able to do that because I've just been so immersed in driving. And so we're kind of enjoying this ride and seeing where it goes over the next little while. And we're just going to kind of not plan too far in advance and just take things as they come.
Well, we're going to segue this because I thought that when you're saying I'm retired, but not retired, I figured you're going in a slightly different direction. And you know that as long as you hear the name James Hinchcliffe, you're not going to get away from this stuff. Sorry, buddy, because I know there's another side of you. First of all, you're on one of the best game shows known to man, Family Feud. So that was race car drivers versus bikini models?
Yeah, Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. Yeah.
Rebecca must have loved that episode for you, eh?
Yeah, because we won. We buried them. They didn't score a single point. We were so savage. It was a group of IndyCar drivers against this team of swimsuit models, and they were very nice. They were very nice girls. But as soon as the game started, it's like we were talking about competition. We can't not do it. So you had these 5 drivers all on one team now working together. Normally we're trying to, you know, beat each other. Now we got to work together and take that intensity times 5 against this unassuming group of girls that are here. It was for charity, man. Like we were way over the top. It was so unnecessary, but we just couldn't help ourselves.
I got to ask, did they wear the bikinis during the show?
No, they did not. That
was their big mistake. If they had come in their outfits, you guys have been, nope. And you would have got no points, but they came dressed professionally.
Laser focused. Wouldn't have mattered.
Eyes on the prize. I love it. So Family Feud was a cool experience. You enjoyed it?
Yeah, it was a blast. I mean, I was one of only 2 guys that went on our team that I like really like that followed the show and had watched it and enjoyed it.
Yes.
So me and TK, we had an absolute blast. We loved it.
Who was the host that day?
Steve Harvey.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. What's he like?
He's awesome. He's incredible. One of the hardest working people you'll ever meet. So witty, so genuine, so friendly, so outgoing, so welcoming. He was great. And then he actually invited me on to his his other show, the Steve Harvey show.
Yes.
After meeting there, which was an interesting experience as well.
Amazing. So, you're doing the late night scene, everything else. And then, of course, what the heck? Dancing with the Stars? After all this, we got the Jordans, we got the cars, and we got the watches, and we're racing, and we're commentating, and clothing lines, and Hinchtown. And where did this fall from? Seriously.
Oh man, it fell from the sky. It was actually the story I got told. So IndyCar is always kind of looking for opportunities for their drivers to kind of get out there outside of the sporting world and kind of draw some more attention to the sport, right? And believe it or not, the woman that organized that, it sort of looks for these opportunities for all the drivers in the series, she had organized for one of the producers of Dancing with the Stars to come, because they were personal friends, to come and watch the taping of Family Feud. And it's like, hey, we got 5 of our drivers there. Come check out, see if any of them you want for the show. So she came and she was like, hey, who's this guy? So they called me up and they're like, hey, would you have any interest in this? And I said, absolutely not. and they said, well, hey, how about you come to a taping of to a live show? Because they were heading into a season at that moment. And we had a race in LA, in Long Beach, while they were filming. So stay an extra day, come see the show, see what you think. Fine. So I went and saw the show and I was like, yeah, it's okay, I guess. And then left. And this was in April, just didn't hear anything else about it. So I guess they figured, I was interested, they lost interest, whatever. And then that August, I got a phone call on a race weekend and they said, hey, James, Dancing with the Stars here. We want you on the show. We need you to move to LA for 3 months and you're going to ballroom dance in front of 12 million people live on TV every Monday night. And I said, hey, Dancing with the Stars. No, click. And it was actually, it was another driver had actually been on the show 10 years prior. Okay. And so I chatted to him about it on the weekend. He was like, dude, you got to do it. It's just something, you got to do it. And I am in this mindset, especially after my accident in 15, I had this new kind of lease on life. I was like, you know what? Take risks, get outside your comfort zone, whatever. So I called him up and said, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Before going on Dancing with Stars, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being me horrible and 10 being amazing, Michael Jackson style dancing, where would you have rated yourself?
-1?
-1?
Yeah. I think the YMCA was about the most I'd ever choreographed a dance in my life.
I'm not going to say this is a racist thing, but it's true. I call it the white man shuffle, where we keep our arms to our sides and we're just...
Yep. You just kind of stay up. That's shuffle, it. Maybe the odd one of these if the beat's going, but that was as far as my dancing was. Yeah.
Me too. So I don't know about you, man. You pay me $1 million to do that. I'll do it, but I don't think I can do it. How the heck? And you finished second. What happened?
Competitive, man. It's that same theme, the first, so the whole start of it was just terrifying, right? I have no experience in anything like this, so far outside your comfort zone. And then we got to the first show, and the first show was terrifying because you're doing it live. You can't, it's not like rehearsal. You can't screw up and start again. It's live on television. There's people, there's an audience there that's never been there before. You're doing it in front of people other than just your partner, basically, for the first time. And I just wanted to survive. I just wanted to not fall down, right? That was my only goal for that show. And at the end of it, I kind of black out. And at the end of it, I'm standing, people are cheering. So I figure it must have gone well. So then, how they give you the little numbers, right? 5, 6, 8, whatever your scores. I always thought that those were just references for the people at home to have a professional tell you how you thought they did, because it's a fan voting show, right? That's how it works.
Yes.
Well, I didn't read the rules before I went on the show. Evidently, those scores are real scores, and it's that in some formula with that and your votes. That's how they decide who moves on. So all of a sudden I thought it went from a popularity contest, and I was like, oh, so like I have some say in this. I have some control over how my scores are, and that affects my performance. And then that competitive switch just got flipped in my brain, and I looked at my partner and I was like, what time do we start practice tomorrow? And I got to the second place because I just worked my butt off. It was 8 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 straight months. And it was just, it's that athlete mentality, right? Like we're wired to push ourselves to go harder. We're used to criticism. We're used to coaching. And so I think athletes inherently do really well on that show. And like athletes finished first, second, and third this season I was on it. And that's what I think is a big part of it.
So let me ask you now, if you get the phone ringing, people seeing your experience on these shows, American Idol.
No, God, no. You can't teach that. You can't teach this.
Survivor?
Yeah, I would do Survivor.
Okay. Temptation Island?
No.
Sorry, Rebecca. Big Brother?
No.
Then I got the one for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Imagine this. Race car driver and his lawyer, Big Brother. Not Big Brother, sorry.
Amazing Race.
We got to do Amazing Race. Imagine the two of us in our Jordans and our watches.
I would do it.
Okay, so Amazing Race, you watching this?
I almost did it.
Really?
I almost did it.
Yes.
So two IndyCar drivers were on it a few years ago, and I was supposed to be one of them. Went through the whole like audition process, I guess, or whatever. They had selected us, this, that, and the other. And they even had to make some concessions because being Canadian, it complicates things with passports and stuff like that. But they got through all that. And this is a true story. I don't know if I've ever told anybody this part, but so it had to go through like 4 different levels. And every level we got the call like, yeah, okay, you're on to the next level, next level, next level. And the final level was being approved by like the top brass at whatever network it was, CBS, I think. And they looked at me and they're like, well, hang on, this was the guy that was on Dancing with the Stars, right? And they're like, yeah. And they go, well, that's an ABC property, so we don't want ABC's sloppy seconds, so kick him off. So they kicked me off, replaced me with a different driver. And we were like, but I've got this group of people that follow and know me solely from that we can bring over to this show. We'll follow because of that. They're like, no. So I almost went, and I didn't get to do it.
Well, there is a Canadian Amazing Race.
There is.
Maybe we can do that. The only thing I know how to ride a motorcycle. I don't know how to drive standard, so I'm gonna have to ask you to teach me that one. And if you can't teach me to drive standard, I don't think anybody can. So
I can, I promise.
Okay, so they're watching this. You know what? Amazing Race Canada. You got your candidates right here. Let's make it bearded action. Let's make it happen. Thank you, James, so much, honestly, for the time today. I know you had a busy schedule. It took us a little bit of time to put this one together, but you're honestly like one of the best human beings I've ever met and, gelled with like the second we met. So really appreciate this and you sharing your stories. Got last question. At this point in your stage, and there's so much more to be written, but if you had to say the legacy of the mayor of Hinchtown, what would you say?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I really hope that, what I'm remembered for one day is something I haven't done yet. There's a few things that I still want to do that I think will benefit a lot of people that I hope is my legacy one day. But otherwise, I don't know. Hope I'm just known as a easygoing guy who was really lucky to got to do what he loved and appreciated every minute of it.
Get this man a Monaco and get him a Daytona.
I got to earn the Daytona.
Got to earn the Daytona. Well, we'll be watching for you, buddy. Now, we're going to put your Instagram handle for people to reach you. Otherwise, best way for the fans to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, everything, all social media, I'm just at Hinchtown. So, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of it. Just it's the best way to reach out.
One of the easiest places to get a residency. Just join and follow.
Exactly. Tax-free. It's great.
The best place. We won't tell the tax people.
Yeah.
James, thank you again for taking the time today on The Chosen Life. And as we sign off, we do our flexing.
Here we go.
And we say, keep living the chosen life.
Keep living it. Keep living the chosen life.
Cheers, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, bud.